Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth concurrent session of INGED 2021, day one. And in this session, Gülcay Karakoyun, is going to deliver her speech on EFL instructors' perceptions of student engagement strategies and in-class practices in blended learning. The floor is yours, Hocam. You have 20 minutes, and then towards the end, I will raise my hand to remind you of the last 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anıl Hocam. Hello, my name is Gülcay Karakoyun, and I work at Bilkent University. And the idea of student engagement, working on student engagement, came up with a conversation with a peer one time. And we were teaching in the same class. I was teaching face-to-face and she was teaching online. And one day she told me that she didn't like teaching in that class because she barely elicited answers from students, and students didn't participate in the lessons. But meanwhile, the class was one of my best classes, but I didn't tell her that. But I wondered what was going on, actually. And I started to read about and investigate about student engagement. And now I feel like I have dived into a big ocean because I didn't know that student engagement is such a broad construct. So I hope I will see the land on the horizon very soon. So this is the outline of my presentation today. And I will begin with the background to the study first. And as you know, almost every aspect of modern life, has transformed due to the innovations in information and communication technology. And we can also see the impacts of those technological innovations in the field of education. So learning technology has now moved into the everyday practice of teaching and learning. For this reason, the modes of instruction have changed to a great extent as a consequence of the developments in computer-based technology and the effective use of technological tools. And these technological tools have helped educators to overcome the barriers of traditional instruction in a language classroom and to find an alternative way of contemporary teaching practices for deep and meaningful learning experiences. And concurrent with the developments in technology, the goals of interactive and engaging learning experiences have made it possible to reconcile this trend of face-to-face and online learning. In this sense, blended learning, which actually emerged as an alternative way to deliver instructions, incorporates technology and traditional methods to address different educational goals. And it also engages learners by reconciling different instructional settings and catering to learners with a different purpose, background, maybe learning styles, learning preferences, especially for learning a foreign language. And also, blended learning, as you know, has extended its use, especially in higher education, with the outbreak of the pandemic. When it comes to student engagement, it is actually active participation in examining, questioning, relating new ideas to old ones, which leads to achieving the retention of learned information, significant for students' academic success, learning, achievement, and performance. Active research on student engagement started 25 years ago, but still there is no consensus on the exact definition of student engagement. Therefore, it's a very broad construct, actually. And also in language, second language learning and teaching literature, engagement talks have not been sufficient as the focus has been on motivation and diverted away from engagement. So due to the pandemic, the use of blended learning has increased in educational institutions and added a new dimension to the discussions over student engagement. Also, there is a need for implementation of effective strategies to promote and enhance student engagement. And also, as I said before, the absence of discussions of engagement in in second language learning and teaching is another problem regarding student engagement in blended learning. Therefore, we think that it's time to investigate teachers' perceptions of the construct, student engagement, and their strategies to create an engaging learning environment. That's why the purpose of the study is to find out EFL instructors' perceptions of student engagement in face-to-face and online education, teaching context, and also to identify the differences between student engagement strategies used by EFL instructors in, again, both learning and teaching contexts. And these are the research questions of this study. And I will refer to them one by one in the coming slides. So now I will continue with the literature review. I will give you brief information about student engagement. Actually, it has different dimensions. So scholars define it as a multidimensional construct. For example, one of the first components is behavioral engagement. It reflects positive construct, participation, effort, and involvement in academic activities. On the other hand, another component is emotional engagement. It reflects students' feelings of belonging to school learning community, interest, and happiness. So, for example, students who are emotionally engaged feel enthusiastic about school and demonstrate a positive learning attitude. And finally, cognitive engagement refers to self-regulation, learning goals, willingness to exert effort, flexibility in problem solving, hard work, and coping with failures successfully. As for student engagement in blended learning, since it's an essential component of learning achievement, retention, and performance, the ultimate goal is to create a learning environment where students pursue learning and engage proactively. In this sense, blended learning provides more engaging learning experiences for students with a combination of online and traditional education, where they participate in class activities and develop a sense of belonging, manage their learning, utilize technology, work in collaboration, develop their learning strategies in online learning. However, there are some difficulties that students encounter in fully engaging because they have to navigate between two different educational contexts. It also leads to disconnection from peers and instructors, as the learning contexts require self-regulation in time and effort. Therefore, effective student engagement strategies constitute a significant factor, play an important role in an engaging learning environment. Specific strategies, you can see them on the screen, can be developed and implemented by teachers to enhance student engagement in the classroom. They are generally related to interactive learning environment. They focus on facilitating active students, responding through thought-provoking questions, which is effective questioning, creating an engaging learning community, providing effective feedback, rapport building, modeling, and use of online tools and applications. And this is a qualitative case study, and it was conducted in a preparatory school at a private university in Ankara. And the instructors were chosen among those who taught in a blended learning and teaching environment for one academic year. And you can see the information about the participants. The participants consist of 10 EFL instructors, 8 of them male, 2 of them female. And their experience of years of experience vary from 4 to 20 years. They are graduates of English language teaching, English language and literature, American culture and literature. 8 of them hold master's degree and 1 of them got a PhD in English language and literature. 2 of them have started PhD in English language and literature. And 4 of the participants are graduates of English language teaching and English language literature. 1 of them only is graduate of linguistics. And before this study, they didn't have any experiences in blended learning. Only 1 of them taught online for 2 months in a language school. But in this study, they all taught blended for an academic year. And in this study, the data were gathered through semi-structured interviews. You can see the information here. There are 30 open-ended questions under 5 categories: educational background, conceptualization of student engagement strategies using face-to-face and online education, and the problems and challenges encountered for student engagement in face-to-face and online education. When we come to the findings and discussions, this is the first research question. It's about how EFL instructors conceptualize student engagement. 8 EFL instructors define student engagement as students responding to teachers' questions and active participation in class activities. And 4 of the participants define it as students' self-motivation. And in addition, 1 of them emphasized the use of paralinguistic features like body language, mimics, and gestures in defining student engagement. And 1 participant defined student engagement as students' willingness to ask questions, which means that students ask or answer questions without being nominated by the teacher. And apart from this, 1 participant stated that there are 2 types of student engagement. 1 of them is promoted by teacher encouragement, and the other one is promoted by students' self-motivation. And this is the second research question, and it's about how EFL instructors determine student engagement strategies they will use in online and face-to-face education. There are factors that influence EFL instructors' choice of student engagement strategies. You can see them on the left side of the table. They implement in the lessons. For example, in face-to-face educations, 1 of the participants stated that she used videos to create an interactive atmosphere and promote engagement in the lesson. Personalization of the lesson content, for example, is another strategy that EFL instructors use. For example, participant 6 did that by adapting information about students to the lesson content to make them be part of the lesson and also to increase engagement. Also, asking follow-up and personalizing questions is another strategy. For example, here participant 7 use follow-up questions to prevent yes-no answers, because when you ask yes-no questions, you give only short answers. And also personalizing questions increase participation, because the students, the students can be more active when they are talking about their personal lives. And question 3, research question 3 is about what student engagement strategies do EFL instructors identify as the most and the least effective? In face-to-face education, for example, 4 of the participants identified communicative activities as one of the effective strategies for student engagement in face-to-face education. Because students work in collaboration, and since they feel that they share the same responsibility with the other members of the group. And therefore, EFL instructors believe that communicative activities make all students responsible for the activities and keep them engaged in the lesson. 6 of the participants reported that rapport building with students increases engagement. For example, praising students' outcomes is one of the aspects of rapport building, and it helps teachers to build a genuine relationship with the students. And also another strategy related to rapport building was having non-academic conversations with the students. For example, about their lives, or maybe anything about anything rather than the lesson. 3 of the participants believe that they help to create a learning environment where students feel comfortable. As for the ineffective strategies, 2 participants stated that asking a question to the whole class did not work well to increase participation, because students don't respond to the questions, they wait others to respond. And another participant believed that asking yes/no questions also doesn't work effectively in engaging students, because students give short answers. In addition to these, use of technology in face-to-face lessons was found ineffective by 2 instructors, because students, rather than participate in the activity or task set by the teacher, they can use their phones for different purposes. In online education, contrary to the experiences in face-to-face lessons, technology helps to promote student engagement. It helps to receive written responses from students. For example, class discussions were identified as effective student engagement strategies. And also 6 of the participants reported that recording students' answers on a Word document and sharing and asking them to discuss increased participation. And contrary to the experiences in face-to-face education, collaborative tasks did not work well in online education, because the instructors cannot monitor students working in breakout rooms at the same time. So for students, it's easy to skip the task or pretend that they have accomplished or finished the task. And the other question is about the differences between student engagement strategies used in face-to-face and online education. The main difference is in doing collaborative tasks, because they are easy to implement in face-to-face lessons, and the nature of the teaching and learning environment enable teacher to control over the students. And use of technology, teachers benefited from more to create interactive lessons, because it makes it possible for students to respond in a written form as well, and it increases students' responses to teachers' questions. Another one, using paralinguistic features, the nature of the context learning online education limits teachers' use of body language, for example. And asking questions students and nominating students for elicitation. There is difference because there were more responses from students in face-to-face lessons, contrary to online lessons where students easily ignore the teacher. And final one, rapport building. Since the low frequency of student responses online education, for example, raising student outcomes reduced. And the last question is about the problems that EFL instructors encounter in implementing student engagement. The first one is students' lack of motivation. And because students did not feel motivated, they actually do not participate in the lessons. Another problem is about technical issues and lack of access to technological devices. 7 participants complain about poor quality of internet connection, or some students even did not have the necessary equipment. Another problem is limited monitoring and using of paralinguistic features. Because of the nature of the online education, it limits teachers monitor or use of their paralinguistic features. And for now, for after this, let's say, interpretation of the participants' responses, we can see that from the literature, we can see that different definitions of student engagement were made for emotional, cognitive, and behavioral. Consistent with the definition of behavioral engagement, the Turkish EFL instructors in this study define student engagement as participation and involvement in academic activities. However, they mostly associate participation with students' responses to teacher questions. They also define student engagement as use of paralinguistic features, having self-motivation and teacher encouragement. And their conceptualization of student engagement influences the strategies, of course. I'm running out of time, so I will briefly summarize and finish it. As you can see in face-to-face education, they ask questions by nominating students. In face-to-face, they use technology to increase student engagement mainly. And they also set collaborative tasks more in face-to-face lessons, but in online education, they do not set collaborative tasks a lot. They do not work as they work in face-to-face lessons. And these are the implications for this ongoing study. More online tools should be provided for the instructors. There should be trainings for instructors for blended learning, because it's a new learning method for teachers, and also for the use of online tools as well. Could be the implication of this study. And finally, before giving training, providing the instructors with training, a need analysis could be a best solution for individual needs. So, okay, I'm running out of time. I think time is up, so I will finish here. Thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you, Gülcay Hocam. Maybe you would like to share your email for further contact in terms of sharing implications, references, or maybe there will be participants who would like to ask you questions. That would be great if you can share.
Yeah, of course. I will write my email on the chat box so that anyone wants to share any ideas, comments, or questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this informative talk. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Grace. I'm currently an associate professor from Department of English Instruction from National Tsinghua University in Taiwan. The title of my presentation is Influence of Corpus Tools on Taiwanese EFL Emergent Researchers' Perceptions and Productions, Reception and Productions of Academic Clusters. And this is outlines of my presentations. I'll start with the introductions, issue typically discuss, literature review, and method analysis discussion, conclusion, implications, limitation, and issue for further research. Additions, etc. identify four major problems, four major areas of writing for non-native speakers. The first one is to organize and structure the thesis, value to substantial arguments with evidence from literature, values to organize paragraphs to show relationships, and values to attend to language problems such as grammar and word choice. Hence, non-native speakers of English or EFL writers, they may not have the structural knowledge or vocabulary for academic writings. Hence, currently there are some different types of free corpus tools for learners to be able to use, such as anti-codes, anti-file converters, anti-movers, COCA, and Linguals around the world. So the purpose of this study is to introduce different types of corpus tools. So in order to raise learners' awareness of academic clusters and their competencies in academic writings. So there were three major research questions. The first one is how did the word selection in the corpus tools reveal participants' awareness of the academic clusters and competencies in academic writings? How did participants feel about using these tools and academic cluster in their writings? And what factors affect participants' attitude towards corpus tools and academic clusters? And in the literature review, I will briefly describe the definitions of academic clusters, corpus tools for academic writings, and review some empirical studies on corpus tools and the literature gap, and I will propose my conceptual framework. So a scholar's Highlands in 28 defines academic cluster as clusters or chunks or bundles, the so-called multi-words expressions. So there are three types. The first type is research-oriented. So learners might be able to use a phrase that in the present study. Or another type is text-oriented. So for example, they will use a phrase that on the base of. Another one is participants-oriented. For example, the researchers can write, it should be notes last. There are a lot of empirical study on corpus tools for academic writings. And for example, the first one, I'll start from hardest ones. Hardest use the so-called Michigan corpus for upper level student papers and use through the quantitative and qualitative data on the questionnaire and interview. They find out that learners benefit a lot from these tools because they could find and analyze text in their academic fields. Another scholar, Linguistic in 2014 used the British National Corpus and another was COCA. And again, they're among the master degree students in the language teacher education programs. So the study analyzed the questionnaires and participants' projects, found out that participants have positive attitude toward using these two tools. However, they need more time to become fully immersed, be familiar with those tools. And two more studies conducted in Taiwan, Xie and Liu in 2008, found out there are two particular tools they use in the Moodles. The first one is Power, and Power was used for learners to do peer editing. The second one is Cares, it's used for concordance. So again, through the analysis of questionnaires and participants' writing, find out that such learning through these the tools can trigger participants' awareness of the structures of research articles, abstracts, and information elements that should be included. And Sun in 2007, designed a tool on her own. She developed a tool called Scarlett's Writing Templates. So 20 graduate students in the study tried to compose their contents. And through her research, she found out students had positive attitude because such language template helped them to have the discipline specific corpus and the source for the language example for them. So based on those empirical study, I composed my own conceptual framework. So students in my class will be exposed to read different kind of academic journal articles. They will use, based on the journal article, they have to use a corpus tool to analyze the structures. And in class, I also told them what academic clusters are and also online tools. So they will be able to learn those tools as well as academic clusters. So they will be aware of those tools and they will be able, hopefully they'll be able to use those tools to include more academic cluster in their academic writings. However, some factors may affect their using corpus tools as well as using academic clusters. For example, their English proficiency levels, their confidence in academic writing, and their past writing experience. So this study was a mixed method design, and the data was collected through three types. The first one is writing text, including the class writing samples, as well as the final proposals, and questionnaires. Questionnaire consists of three parts. The first part was about learners' profiles, about their demographic information. The second type was the questions related to know about their knowledge about corpus tools. The third type was their attitude towards using such tools. So those participants answered the questionnaire on 7-point scales, from 1 to 7. 1 strongly disagree, 7 strongly agree. At the end of the semester, students also have to write their reflections on how those corpus tools help them to be able to learn about academic clusters and how to improve their writings. Because I was the instructor, of this class, when I conducted this research, definitely I used the so-called convenience sampling. The study was conducted 2 years ago in 4 academic years. So I conducted the study in 2 classes. The first class was for 35 seniors for their writing class. Another class is for graduate students for the first year research method and thesis writing. So the data collected for the analysis parts, for the questionnaires, I use descriptive analysis, try to find out the mean, standard deviation, and other types. For the quantitative data, through the reflections and writing sample, I start with the 10 codes. I give all the major category into themes and find the major salient themes. So here are the results. The first type, I'll provide more details in the tables and figures later on. The first one is participants' awareness of academic clusters. So participants have some awareness of academic clusters in terms of they heard about that before, or they can give definitions. And surprisingly to know that undergraduates have more knowledge about academic cluster than graduate students. The second one is participant knowledge of academic clusters. So the type cluster they use can be identified in their learning records. In the Corpus tool was the study aims too. And of all the 89 online learning records, only 59 was considered as academic cluster. Some students misuse or misunderstood the term academic clusters. About their attitudes and their knowledge toward Corpus tools. And graduate students have more knowledge and become more aware of the Corpus tools. And luckily, more graduate students use the Corpus tools before for their writings. About the factors that affect their writings, their confidence in academic writings, as well as their knowledge and about their writing experience affects their awareness and attitude towards Corpus tools. Also, compared to the first drafts, the number of academic clusters they used increased in the revised versions, particularly in both Class A for the undergraduates and both Class B for graduate students. And I'm going to share with you some of the numbers and tables. But in terms of the first one, participants' knowledge of academic clusters, you can see from these figures, from these tables, they have heard about the term before, and they can give the definitions, particularly undergraduate. In terms of knowledge of what Corpus tools, graduate students have more awareness. They use the tools before, probably in other classes or in the undergraduate level in other schools. And for example, one of the samples they wrote on their online post on the learning records, they choose the present study aims to find out and describe the articles. This paper aims to analyze. So the phrase that aims to was more like academic cluster for it. Before they will write this study is about, what's about. Yeah. For the participant attitude toward Corpus tools. So overall, they have positive attitude towards using those Corpus tools, particularly they feel that they're useful and they are willing to use that in the future. So overall, they find out those Corpus tools was not difficult to use because I model how they can be able to use those tools in class, and also invite guest speakers who use those tools before, share with them how to use these tools, and then they will be able to benefit from both from my presentation and also from guest speakers' presentation. So they find out it was not difficult to use, but they probably need more time to know how to use that well. And more about the usables, they find out that the confidence in using the tools. Using the tool can help them increase their confidence about the academic writings in the future. And also the usefulness, particularly they find out that they can find a lot of examples of academic cluster from the Corpus tool. So they will be able to apply that into their future writings, as well as they thought that they would like to learn about those tools and they don't want their writing sounds too curriculum. too. And about the persistence of using those tools, definitely, because graduate students, they have to complete their thesis in the future. So they will be more willing to use those tools in the future. And they will be able to, they have the willingness to recommend the tool to other fellow students. And they use the clusters that you can see from the first draft and to the second revised draft. So in like, for example, take undergrad students for introduction parts on the first draft, only one student use the so-called academic clusters, but because they use the tools to help them. So in the revised versions, they include more academic clusters. And it also happens in the graduate students levels. And let me share with you some of the examples they wrote before. They wrote that purpose. Researchers shows that young learners can learn better with greater motivations. However, so in their revised draft, they began to use other phrases. For example, the aims of the present study was to use. In terms of issue, in the study we will use. So that it's more like spoken language. But later on, they began to revise the writings. They said the study attempt to answer the following research question. Those sentences sounds more like academic. Another example is that in the purpose here, the purpose of the study is. So here, again, students will be able to use article as an attempt to show that. So students' writing improves and they have more confidence. So in terms of my discussion parts, and because learners, they have rich exposures from not only from the journal articles, but also from the corpus tools. They have the rich exposure to those academic clusters. So they will be able to use that in the future. So reading academic journal articles and providing instructions how to use those academic clusters and model how to write each start from introductions, literature review and method section parts, and online tools foster the exposure to those academic clusters. The second type is they start from awareness that were aware of those corpus tools, and they begin to have the knowledge and they have the competencies in using those tools. So learners start with the reading skills and grammatical knowledge of academic cluster. So they will be able to perform how to search and how to determine which one will be an appropriate academic cluster they will be able to use in their academic writings. And therefore, I suggest that teachers of academic writings should integrate academic cluster into the academic writing class. So novice writers and emergent researchers should be taught how to use those academic clusters expressly and practice more in class. Another good one is that strongly suggest that teachers, instructor of academic writing can integrate introductions of corpus tools for learners. So they will be able to know how to use those tools and be able to help them to improve their writing. So there are two major limitations. The first one, because I was the one who conducted research in 2 classes, and the class was too small. With undergraduate, I only had 35 students. For graduate students, I only have 10. So those small group of EFL emergent researchers the finding may not be able to apply to other academic writing communities. And the second one, the short duration of the study. And the study was conducted in only 1 semester. So a future study conducted for a longer period of time, particularly, for example, start from the first years of the graduate students and check their learning all the way through when they graduate, when they complete their thesis. So another issue for the study will be able to compare and contrast the first draft that the writing they took in my class, they complete in my class, show the thesis and compare and contrast about their writing improvement. Okay, and this is the end of my presentation. I hope I finished in time.
Yes, you were on time.
Thank you.
So thank you for this great presentation. And if the participants have any questions, we can take it. I'm sorry if I missed it, but for this specific study, which corpus did you use exactly?
In class, students use tools and use lingual and anti-counts. Anti-counts. Most of the time students use lingual. That was the ones designed by a professor in Taiwan in my school.
Did you just, left the students free for their choices, or like not as a corpus, but like how to use it in terms of, or did you just give instructions?
I give them, I model them how those corpus tools will be able to use. I also invite speakers to show them how to use. So I did not limit them to choose specific one. They can use the one that they feel the most comfortable in using in class or after class.
Okay. I guess we don't have any other questions from the participants. Thank you for the presentation, dear Grace, by the way.
Today in the afternoon concurrent sessions, we will start with Zeynep Dingiloğlu, and the title of her presentation will be Combination of Generations, How Do We Fit In? And the floor is yours, Zeynep Hocam.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for having me here as a presenter. It means a lot to me because this will be my first experience as the presenter in a situation like this. And I would like to thank everyone who is here to listen to me, and I would like to give them a warm welcome. As said before, my title is Combination of Generations, How Do We Fit In? The title will explain itself as the presentation goes on, but without further ado, let's see the contents page. I would like to describe my contents very briefly. Firstly, there will be an image of my abstract, as you might have seen from the abstract catalog. Afterwards, I will talk about the characteristics of Gen Z in short and Generation Z as a long name, and their behavior in the EFL classroom, very briefly. Afterwards, the title itself will be included as a subtitle in the presentation, How Do We Fit In? In that part, I will make 8 points that helped me and that might help you with this generation while dealing with this generation. Next up, after describing their characteristics, how they behave in our classes, and after what we can do, I will make a small comparison between the ideas, applications, approaches, and many other stuff that happened in previous education fields with the ones that are happening now. It will be very brief. And next up, I will talk about my own experiences. It will be, again, as short as possible because of my time limitation. And lastly, in the remaining time, of course, I would love to hear your questions and do my best to answer them. Therefore, here is my abstract that you have seen in the catalog. And to respect the abstract and its purpose, I put the order correctly into my presentation. And starting with who is Gen Z, we can describe them being as, in explanation given in dictionaries and many other resources. They are the generation that was born in 1997 to 2012. Therefore, they are the most populated generation at schools, we can say, which makes us the ones that are interacted with them all the time. Because from 3rd grade, the youngest Generation Z learner, to higher education, the oldest Generation Z learner is in our classes, is in our schools. But here we have some questions that we should ask ourselves first. How much do we know them? How familiar are we with them? And what are our perceptions of them? And what are their perceptions of us? These are the necessary questions that we should keep in mind whenever we deal with students from this generation. Moving on, I would like to state this first. The characteristics that I will list are the ones that are compared to previous generations. It doesn't mean that the previous generations did not or never had these characteristics. But we can say that Generation Z is more diverse. They have diverse views, opinions, or orientations, also personalities. Next up, they are self-taught students. Because of online education, sometimes they had trouble maybe learning something, and they were the ones trying to access info. Even though they did not, seek information, they somehow taught themselves some of the topics. They're more entrepreneurial, they have brilliant ideas, and they're more transparent. I mean, back then, maybe we were supposed to put our thoughts into 100 filters before producing them or making them an outcome. But this generation just has maybe one filter in their brains, and they just tell you what they're thinking of, and they're very brave about it. They're more visual in terms of both learning and production. And of course, they're more internet and tech savvy. Especially the generation born after the year 2000, just had all of the technological devices necessary to conduct learning or entertainment by themselves. And if we look at our classroom situation, we can say that social media is one of the cases that we should be careful about and we should be considerate of, because it is considered as the black sheep of our society, but it is not the one to blame in our case. Why? Because there are so many platforms that provide our students with so many content that they are exposed to the language used in its authentic way, such as the news, such as humor, basically humor, if we are speaking about primary school children or middle school adolescents. Through social media platforms, as I've said, they can learn about the latest news. They can learn about gender norms. We have many diverse students in terms of gender specification. They can learn about morals. And actually, let me tell you, this generation has no judgment towards one another. I mean, bullying is very less in this generation, as much as I have observed. They're very accepting of their friends and others. Lastly, of course, humor, we said. Therefore, let me repeat myself once again. They can express their thoughts and their ideas directly because, as I've said, they are exposed to the language and exposed to the content in the language, in the target language. That's why they do not have to translate anything. They do not have to find out a meaning of a word, because once they see it in context, they can apply it immediately. Another factor is them being pragmatic and socially active individuals. Sometimes, especially with adolescents, we have many quiet kids in the classroom. Since they're developing and since they're shaping their personalities, since they're going through a change, they might be more silent. But if we add some controversial topics, which will not cause any harm, of course, in the classroom, we might see them becoming the debater in our classroom, actually, because all of them have ideas about all of these adult topics that maybe even we do not know much about. Therefore, including some topics which are political, which are societal, or which are in terms of sexual orientation, maybe racism, we will see them speaking a lot in our classroom. And next up, one last characteristic of them is their attention span. We talk about attention span in students separately. I mean, young learners, adolescents, adult learners, and how the attention span gets longer and longer as they grow up. But unfortunately, since online education took place in our lives and we were not able to reach them in contact, they became more distracted. Therefore, we should treat them like young learners if we have students from middle school or from high school, because their attention span is very short. Also, this is an ability of them because they can receive various information in a short amount of time. And in addition to receiving the information, they're able to produce an outcome. Therefore, we should be prepared. We should have as many topics, as many contents that we can have in our class. Moving on to how do we fit in? This is my favorite part of this presentation, because this is more, in my case, a more friendly approach in this presentation. Here are some tips, or there will be some tips or tricks that we can apply, that we can use in time, of course. Applying 8 of them at the same time, trying to adapt to them at the same time, will not be helpful for us, just like it won't be helpful to ignore them. But let me explain my title first. It might have sounded more confusing at first once you saw it, but it comes from validation, actually, because it was only our students who seeked for our validation back then. We were the ones accepting them, and they were the ones looking for acceptance. But now we can say that this validation that I'm talking about is a mutual manner between us and them. And through mutual understanding, we will have fulfilled learning needs in our classroom with students who belong to Generation Z, of course. And it is our turn to put more effort in to fit into their worlds, because we already let them in our world somehow, one way or another. Now, the first 4 things that I will talk about are: by being up to date, we can fit in. By up to date, I mean following the latest trends, keeping yourself up to date. They like to follow the news. It's not just trends, but as I said, keep yourself up to date, follow the latest news, be aware of what is going on nationally and internationally throughout the world, throughout the country. Also, make yourself aware of the trends, because they transfer it to their language. You can hear them speaking like in a different language, but they're also using some popular terms that are now a trend. We can fit in by using a more familiar language. This is actually connected to being up to date. Using the internet language, such as sus for suspicious. I hear this a lot in my classroom, that students use it for their friends who are misbehaving or who are acting in a, sneaky way. They say literally sus every time. Stan is another Gen Z word, which stands for support. Woke, which means being aware of the stuff going around, being woke about other topics, and not actually believing everything that you see at first sight. Ghosting means stopping the conversation with somebody that you were in contact with once, but all of a sudden, so you become a ghost to them, basically. No cap, I mean cap, stands for lie. So no lie, it is used for. And cringe, which is something that we are more familiar with, I guess, is used for the embarrassment that we feel for somebody else. Keep yourself updated about these words as well, because they change constantly. They do not last even a month or a week. As I've said, being up to date is the key in here. Next up, of course, we should include technological devices in the lessons. We always used online education last year, but now we are face-to-face with them. But using the projector, using the computer, using different softwares such as Kahoot, Nearpod, or Class Dojo will keep them engaged in our classroom. And in addition, be careful. By being careful, we can fit in. Why being careful? Being careful about their orientations. It can be sexual orientations. We have more LGBTQI+ students in our classes because they are not afraid to show their true identity. As it was mentioned before, they are more transparent with themselves, with their thoughts, with their friends. Also political. Respect every political view that you receive by them. It doesn't mean that you should agree, but you should have a neutral approach. And lastly, the societal orientations that they have in the society that they're in outside school. This is a more specific topic, and even if the students are not talking about it, you can just see who or where they belong to as a society. In the next part, the next 4 elements that I will talk about are asking for their help or their ideas. Even though I belong to this generation, I was born in 1998, I sometimes have trouble, especially with the technology, because sometimes I see something that I have never been exposed to before, and I question myself out loud. It's a small asking for help of me. I'm like, what happened to this computer? And one student immediately helps me. You're going to do this. There is a problem with that. They warned me about the stuff that's, you know, malfunctioning in the classroom. Also, hearing their ideas is a very colorful trend in the classroom right now, because sometimes they help me explain the topic. They ask for the definition of a word, for example. I explain it in an academic language. Maybe it is hard for them. Maybe it is not satisfactory for them. But then a student raises her hand or his hand and says, we can describe it by using these words, or we can describe it by giving this example. And I think to myself, how could I never think of that? Therefore, have them speak as much as they can in terms of help and idea sharing. Next up, we should be the moderator instead of the authority now. Because still, there is this belief of teacher versus student in our students' minds. They think that we are their opponents. They think that we are punishing them by giving homework. They think that we are going to get mad once they do something wrong. No, we should find ways to give positive feedback, which will be constructive rather than destructive. We should construct also an accepting environment where we stand by them, not against them. And next up, lastly, we have by motivating them to learn, we can fit in. This generation has access to information at the tip of their fingers, in their smartphones, not even their computers, in the small device that can fit inside in their palm. They have access to this info. Therefore, instead of providing them with more knowledge, we can balance it by providing them with motivation. Once they're motivated to learn, they will catch the info by themselves. After explaining how we can fit in, I would like to briefly explain the previous applications and the applications that we should adapt to now. Then there was this standardization that we all went through, but now our classrooms are more diverse, more inclusive, rather than, disagreeing with our students. And explicit teaching was used. We would give them the rules, we would give some examples, and then that would be it. But now they're the ones that discover the language and how it is used in context. Context presentation first, rule presentation next is the thing that I do in my classes. This way they have more fun as well. And we were the authority, but now we're the guides in the classroom. And the learners were the ones that were passive, the ones that were the recipients, but now they are the active and productive ones in the classroom. Afterwards, I will talk about the 3 titles of my own experiences. The first one is familiarity, the second one is awareness, and the third one is attention. In detail, we should familiarize us with them. Use social media platforms. You might be, prejudging TikTok, for example, but I downloaded it during the lockdown, and I realized that it provides you with many topics that you might be interested in. It gives you content according to your likes, according to your interests. Therefore, you can also have fun with that. Also, students meet on Discord, which is an online speaking type of game playing platform. You can get more info about it from them. And An experience that I had was last year in online education. There was this application called Vine, which was very similar to TikTok, where people could upload 6-second long videos, and some of them were very popular. And one of the students made a reference. He said the first half of the sentence of that popular Vine, and I completed his reference. I cannot tell you how amazed he was. He was so amazed that he was like, the teacher knows what I'm talking about. And then he started to chat with me outside lesson. I would keep the Zoom meeting on and we would talk during the break time. That's how we formed a connection. Next up, we have awareness of orientations. The language that we should use should be more gender inclusive. There is no gender which is greater than the other. Also, we have non-binary students in the classroom who think that and who believe that they do not have a gender. So be careful with the pronouns that you use. My experience with this orientation was this year. One of my female students was talking about pronouns and she was talking to her friend. I was overhearing them. And she told to her friend, the teacher doesn't know the pronouns, I'm sure, I bet. And she raised her hand, asked me about my pronouns, and I told her my pronouns are she, her. Again, she was just as amazed as my student was amazed last year. She turned to her friend, said, oh my God, she knows pronouns. And then she told me her pronouns. That's why and how I formed a connection with my students. And last one is paying attention. Not only hearing them, but also listening to them. Having as many small talks and deep talks with them actually is a very fulfilling experience for us as well. Let me tell you something that I actually experienced today. We're going through a unit at school now, which is about food. And the age group that I'm teaching is very self-aware of themselves. And I actually made a small public service announcement. I told them that I know this unit might be triggering for some of you. Some of you might have eating disorders, which is something that experts should deal with. I am not the one to help you here, but let me tell you whenever you feel uncomfortable so that I can change the topic and change it into something more light for you. And one of my students actually turned out had an eating disorder. And she thanked me at the end of the lesson. Again, forming connections, which is my favorite thing that I do with my students. And that was it for my presentation, actually. Thank you all for bearing with me. And if I still have some extra time, I would like to have a Q&A session with the valuable participants that I have here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Zeynep Hocam. Actually, I'd like to give more time, extra time for the question and answer session, but in 5 minutes, another session is starting. But you can write your email in the chat box. And if they have any questions, they can send the questions to you directly.
Oh, of course. I would be really glad I am adding my email into the chat box whenever and if you have any questions and anything that you would like to discuss or advise me, I am more than welcome to receiving your emails.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We are in room 4 with another session titled A Study of EFL Instructors' Challenges Posed by Linguistic and Cultural Diversity at Tertiary Level in Turkey by Dr. Akın Gürbüz and Professor Dr. Rana Yıldırım. And I will ask our attendees to ask their questions through the chat box. I'm sure our presenters will be able to answer them at the end of the session. So without further ado, the floor is yours, hocalarım.
Thank you very much, Büşra Hocam. Welcome, everyone. So as far as I see, we have 15 participants. Thank you very much for coming and to be willing to listen to us. In fact, with my colleague Akın, we are going to be reporting on the findings of a larger study today. As you see in the title, it's about the EFL instructors' challenges posed by linguistic and cultural diversity in their classrooms at tertiary level in Turkey. So I'm going to be giving the stage to Akın, and then we will be answering the questions and responding to the comments together. Thank you very much for coming again. Akın?
Thank you very much, Rana Hocam, for this brief introduction. So the study, as Rana Hocam explained, this study is a part of a larger study, and the study was conducted in, the larger scale study was conducted in several universities, but the number of immigrants and refugees in our country has been increasing recently. We have had a motivation to conduct such kind of a study, as can be seen in the bar chart and in the line chart. Both the number of refugees and immigrants and also the number of international students at tertiary level have been increasing quite rapidly in the recent years. And the main motivation for us in order to conduct such a study was the changing landscape of the educational institutions. And this indicates that there is it has been necessary for the teaching professionals to have certain competences regarding diversity in their classrooms and regarding linguistic and cultural, students with linguistic and cultural backgrounds, different backgrounds. So we have been facing with diverse populations in our classrooms, and also the distinctive characteristic and culture system of higher education institutions, it makes it necessary to cope with learners from diverse backgrounds, to handle the challenges that they bring into our classrooms. As teaching professionals, we need to create and sustain a caring and safe environment for all the learners in our classrooms. We need to cater for all of them, and we need to allocate equal learning opportunities to promote learner achievement, because these are, our attitude towards such learners would definitely affect their academic achievement too. We've mentioned that this is a part of a larger study, and we will the main study was conducted to explore the multicultural teaching competences of EFL instructors with regards to their awareness, knowledge, attitude levels, and also the challenges and strategies the challenges they experience in their classrooms, and also the strategies that they tackle in order to overcome such such challenges. So this presentation will be mainly on the challenges and strategies part of the study. Our research questions, were directed to exploring the challenges posed by linguistic and cultural diversity and the strategies they use in order to overcome this or tackle these challenges. In order to collect and analyze the data for this part of the study, semi-structured interviews and video-stimulated recall interviews were conducted. We conducted 20, the interviews, semi-structured interviews with 20 instructors. They were conducted in English and transcribed verbatim. And throughout these interviews, we tried to explore their feelings about diversity, and the positive and negative experiences they faced in their classrooms, and the type of strategies they employed in order to overcome these challenges. And we also video recorded 4 instructors' classes, 2 hours for each. And the video stimulated recall interviews were employed after the classes in order to reflect on their classroom teaching with a specific reference to diversity in the classroom. The setting of the study was mainly, the qualitative data was mainly collected from a state university, Gaziantep University, because this university has a significant indication in terms of the type of population change and the diversity in this school. As can be seen, the number of international students in 2015 was over 2,000, but in 2019 these reached to over 4,000 students. So it could be seen that there is it has been multiplied in about 5 years' time. The findings of the study indicated that the qualitative and content analysis of the data indicated that the participant instructors, they most frequently cited on diverse learners' lack of proficiency in target and local language, and this caused a communication breakdown. And in order to tackle this challenge, they cited that they used strategies to facilitate their comprehension, and they used nonverbal language. Also, they used translation, with the help of peer support from other learners with a similar background, linguistic background at least. And a second theme that emerged from the analysis of data was isolation of diverse learners, which was secondly most frequently cited by the participating instructors. And for such kind of a challenge, they stated that they encouraged peer support through pair and group work activities. They also claimed that they experienced conflicts regarding cultural, religious, and political issues. And in order to prevent the occurrence of such conflicts, they acted proactively and they took precautionary measures before, and they avoid the discussion of political or religious issues in their classrooms. With regards to the diverse learners' competence, they also, participation, they claimed that this was another challenge that they experienced in their classrooms. And for this, they encouraged classroom participation by giving place to the culture, local culture, or to some extent, the linguistic backgrounds of the learners in their classroom. Especially, they encourage those learners to talk about their local culture, and some also claim that they allow them to make presentations and talk about these in their classrooms. Also, the participating instructors claimed that they experienced difficulties with regards to those learners' language skills, especially those from Middle East countries with different linguistic backgrounds who use different alphabets. The participating teachers, instructors claimed that they experienced challenges regarding punctuation, spelling, grammar, and for this, they claimed that they assigned remedial tasks in order to motivate these learners and in order to help these learners to catch up with their classmates. And a final challenge that the participating instructors claim to have experienced is about their own competency with regards to multicultural teaching. So they claimed that because they didn't have any official training or education about the issue about multicultural teaching, so in general, they experience challenges. And for this, they stated that they cooperated with their colleagues, or they even demanded for further in-service teaching, teacher education programs, or even some wished they could have had such kind of courses in their pre-education, pre-service teacher education programs. So with regards to communicational breakdown, they claimed that they used nonverbal language and also peer support for translation. For example, in an extract from one of the participants, he claims that, he states that those learners with a low level of Turkish and also in the target language in English, they have difficulties in communicating with those learners, and these also caused this affected the pace of the class, and also it, on the other hand, it affected other students' motivation and concentration. It caused a loss of motivation for those learners too. So he had to cope with such kind of a challenge in his classroom. He also, another participant, for example, claimed that he tried to talk to involve those, make those learners to participate in the class, but in general, because of language problem, he doesn't know how to do that, because he cannot communicate with those learners in any way, and he doesn't feel competent to do that. And with regards to isolation of learners, they claim that they encourage those learners to be pairs or to mix local and international students in pair and group work activities to support their classroom participation. For example, one of the participants stated that those international students, some of those, they feel alienated and they feel isolation, and but he's aware of that. It's the teacher's responsibility to find ways to overcome such challenges or such problems in the classroom by creating a good atmosphere, or by creating a caring and safe atmosphere for all. Another participant stated that, again, those students feel isolated, demotivated, and as if they did not belong to the classroom. And he, stated this as a negative aspect of diversity. But another participant stated that he used strategies to overcome by mixing learners from different backgrounds and pairing them together. With regards to cultural, religious, and political issues, they claimed that they acted proactively. They took precautionary measures before the class, and they avoid discussing such kind of issues in the classroom. Sometimes it might be difficult for both the instructor himself to stand neutral and to keep balance between, in times of conflicts in the classroom regarding political or religious issues. But one of the participating instructors claimed that he or she has to remain neutral as a teacher and keep the balance. For classroom participation, the problem of classroom participations, they claim to have encouraged classroom participation by giving place to diverse learners' local culture and also their linguistic background. They can also talk about their own, or the teacher, the instructors made this as a topic of the classroom content to motivate those learners. With regards to their language skills, the participating instructors they claim that they have provided remedial tasks, remedial assignments, so that those learners can catch up with their classmates and they can cover the difficulties or the challenges they experience in the classroom. Finally, the participating instructors claimed that they also they need certain competencies and they lack these. And for this, they demanded for in-service trainings, and they claimed that they have cooperated with their colleagues. For example, when they were directed a question about whether they have received any sort of workshops, training, or in-service or other conferences regarding the issue, most stated that they didn't have such kind of a training, and they generally try to handle by experiencing the problems or challenges, and also they try to do it with their own effort. It can be seen that although most recognize the multifaceted aspects of diversity in their classrooms, most participating instructors, they endeavor to ensure the participation of learners as a whole with their own arduous effort. In line with this, Acar Çiftli and Gürol claim that teachers working in multicultural contexts are supposed to deal with social, institutional, professional, and personal challenges. And the participating instructors also emphasized the essential connection between experience and constructing knowledge about learners from diverse backgrounds, because most claim that they didn't have any official training about this. They could only construct their knowledge or by experiencing or by working in such contexts. So experience has a significant role in learning to cope with diverse learners. And some even claim that this is an opportunity for their professional development and learning about differences. When certain groups of students are isolated and deprived of essential support in classroom, Gay claims that they can perform, they cannot perform in a similar, or achieve similar success with those who get the support, or with those who are in the local context. Garibay also claims that it is essential to provide a safe, valued, and respected context to those learners, and it has a significant effect on the engagement and performance of those learners. There are many scholars who claim that the multiculturally responsive teaching requires a social transformation, an institutional and social transformation, which includes the transformation of curricula and the transformation of teaching approach and materials, the staff's attitudes, their awareness and behaviors, the school goals, policies, and culture should be transformed according to the demands of the new population and the new diverse population. Also, Jurek states that it's essential to understand the variety. It brings richness to educational context and organize programs that might help teachers to understand how characteristics of ethnic groups affect students' behaviors, and the development of educational programs that might help learners to understand knowledge is constructed socially. The study indicates that the findings of the study indicate that there is a need to organize in-service training to assist those teaching professionals to handle diversity in their classrooms. And such training should start earlier at the pre-service level, that is the need to incorporate courses on multicultural teaching to enable prospective teachers to learn about what diversity means and how to accommodate a teaching that considers the needs of learners from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds. Thank you very much for your patience. I tried.
It is just the time, Hocam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hocam, Rana Hocam, and Akın Hocam for your informative presentation. So I kept raising my hand. Sorry for that, but you know we have to keep to the limits. So I think our attendees can ask their questions via email if they wish to do so, since we don't have any time left.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No time for questions and comments?
Sorry for that.
It is the most valuable part of the session. But, oh my goodness, you're going to miss it.
I'm sorry for that, but the next session starts in like 3 minutes.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Maybe you can share, Hocam, maybe you can share your email addresses in the chat box. So
yeah, we can. We
have any questions.
Yeah, we will be delighted to receive comments and questions because it will also help us to, you know, further our study and make amendments in our future studies.
And your contact information is also in the abstract book, the conference booklet.
Right.
So anyone who will be willing to ask any questions and well maybe send some comments can do so.
All right. Okay. I'm just putting it here. Thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. That was a nice research. Congratulations.
Welcome to room 5. This is the 4th concurrent session. On the first day of our conference. Our speaker is Aslı Altuntaş, and the title of her presentation is Interactive Technologies in the Language Classroom During Distance Education, an explanatory study of study of its use and effectiveness. Aslı Hocam, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Aydan Hocam. So good afternoon and welcome to my presentation. I'm very happy and honored to see you in my session. I'd like to thank Aydan Hocam and everyone in the organizing committee for preparing such a great conference and giving me the chance to present here. My presentation is on interactive studies, so I would like it to be an interactive one if you accept to be part of it. So shall we start with a word cloud activity? The question is, what are you expecting to get out of this session? And for that, I'd like you to enter classpoint.app and enter the code here. Classpoint.app. And we have 20 seconds left. Okay, thank you. Now, today's agenda is, as you see in the screen, I'll start with some theoretical background, and then I'm going to tell you about some interactive tools I use in my classes. Then I'm going to introduce some student feedback. And closing remarks. So due to the pandemic, the field of language teaching, among all other fields, has gone through an immense transformation. For over 2 years or so, with the sudden need for distance education worldwide, educators have felt the necessity to apply different technologies to make their lessons more attractive and appealing for their students. In fact, the integration of technology in education is a highly controversial issue. Some believe that we don't need it, but some like to use it in their lessons. Yes, there are several things we should consider while integrating technology in our lessons. But of course, there is a fact we can't deny. Our students are digital natives, and we should, they cannot live without technology. Their mobile phones are always in their hands. They're sending and receiving messages. They are playing games. So we can't deny the importance of technology. And we should, to keep up with them, we should include at least a little bit of technology in our lessons. So there are other ways instead of using technology, yes, but why should we keep up with the modern world? Because life is changing fast. Here, I think I have to talk a bit about the 21st century skills. I know you're all familiar with them. We can see them under 3 different categories, such as learning skills, literacy skills, and life skills. And there are 12 abilities under these 3 categories. What are learning skills? Critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. And under literacy skills, we have information, media, and technology. And under life skills, we have leadership, productivity, flexibility, initiative, and social skills. And to prepare our students for the modern world, we have to cover these skills in our teaching experience. To do this, now I want to talk about the role of the teacher. A few days ago, Aydan Hocam shared a piece of news on social media telling that the most important piece of technology that schools have is their teachers. And I find it really meaningful. Yes, I believe we should include technology in our lessons, but without the teacher, without a carefully thought lesson plan, technology is nothing, unfortunately. So I believe that first we should plan our lesson carefully and determine the activities we will do during our lessons. Then we can integrate the technology tool that will serve. So generally, I plan my lessons according to the 5 E's lesson plan model. The components of this plan is, as you see in the screen: engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. I prepare my lesson plans according to these steps, and then I integrate the technology that will serve these skills. So the role of technology. I think technology is a means that fills the gap between our students and us. So, of course, there are challenges technology brings. Some of them can be lack of technological devices. Our students may not have computers, smartphones, laptops. Another problem might be internet connection. But as we are going through a hybrid teaching experience now, we have in our institution 60% face-to-face education and 40% online education. So they solve these problems. And they are born into technology, but most of the times they don't know how to use it effectively. For example, sometimes I tell them to send me emails. Once one of my students said, "Ma'am, I don't have an email account." And I said, "Don't you have the social media accounts?" "Yes," he said, "I have." So how do you enter your social media account?" I said, "without having an email." He said, "When I click on the icon, it automatically opens." So he isn't aware that he's using an email account to enter his social media account. And they may have some difficulty navigating the application. We also can have this problem. So to eliminate this problem, we have to learn the tool very well before going into the classroom. And in the classroom, we should give clear instructions to help them navigate the tool in a good way. And their attention span might be a problem here while using technology, because they may have difficulty concentrating on both the teacher and the slides on the board and navigating the application on their mobiles. And while using the application, if they receive a message, they may want to read and respond to their messages. So, but anyway, they can send messages all through the lessons, even if we don't use technology devices, because they have the ability to write messages without looking at the keyboard on their smartphones. So we can't prevent this. And I think these are not, these shouldn't hinder our use of technology in class. Now I'm going to talk about some of the technology tools I use in my sessions. I am running out of time, so the first one is ClassPoint. ClassPoint is an integrated interactive teaching and classroom quiz tool designed for PowerPoint. You download the application and you see it on your PowerPoint toolbar, and you easily create polls, add multiple choice questions, word clouds, short answers. It makes the use of polls and questions very easy. And the toolbar is like this. You see the pens here, you see question types. And when you are in presentation mode, you see a whiteboard here, a quick poll, and a pick a name activity. Quick poll is the most frequently used feature of this application. You don't even need to prepare questions. You ask your question, you press the quick poll icon here, and you create the poll. So it's very easy to use. And does it need my expectations? Yes, because it's very practical, time-saving, and you can insert the results as a slide. It is very useful. And you see the students' answers on teacher leaderboard. It is another good way to use it. So, what do you think of this interactive tool? Do you already use it in your own teaching, or would you consider trying it? Keep your answers in mind, please. At the end of the session, we're going to talk about them. Another tool I use a lot in my lessons is Canva. Canva for Education. Have you heard of it? I don't know. Canva for Education is a great tool because it has a lot of different kinds of templates, ready-to-use templates. And if you have an educator account, it's 100% free. You have the access to all templates, and you have the chance of integrating your slides into Google Classroom. It meets my expectations, yes, because it's very practical. You don't have to create a template from scratch. And there are various types. I'm going to show you in a minute. And these templates can be easily turned into interactive assignments. You can send through Google Classroom. There are hundreds of different education presentation templates, as you see. There are Bitmoji classrooms to make your lessons colorful, let's say. A lot of group work activities, graphic organizers, and even videos. Students fill in the slides and they can turn them into videos with music. And it is very enjoyable for them. And you can even find ready-to-use worksheets here on this platform. So what do you think of this interactive tool again? I'm going to ask you at the end of the session. And another tool I use a lot is Pear Deck. Pear Deck is another interactive add-on, Google Slides add-on. If you prepare your lessons on Google Slides, you can easily open the add-on, Pear Deck add-on, and include, let me show you, ready-to-use templates, and you see the question types here. You can even add audio slides into your presentations. And there are ready-to-use prompts for beginning of a class, during a class, and end of class, and they are all interactive. You give the class code to your students, they enter the application, and they do the activities. So what do you think of this interactive tool? And lastly, my fourth interactive tool is Nearpod. In the past, we could use Nearpod as a Google Slides add-on again, but now Google Slides add-on is not free. It requires premium account. But when you go into the Nearpod website, you can use it for free. You can create your lessons for free. It is a good way to apply live formative assessment and open-ended tasks. It is free and quick to prepare. It is customizable again. And you don't need to prepare your slides from scratch. You don't need to spend time for that. And you can use these lesson templates synchronously in your lessons at teacher pace, and you can use them asynchronously. You can assign them to your students and they can do the activities in their own time at student pace. And the activities are divided into two sections. The first one is content section to prepare your lessons. You see the contents you can add. And in the other section, activities section, there are some games, collaborate boards, open-ended questions, matching pairs, quizzes, fill in the blanks type activities.
Aslı Hocam, you need to wrap your speech up. Your time is about to finish.
Okay, thank you, Hocam. So, I'd like to, before I start, can you now please go into this ClassPoint app to tell what you feel about these applications. ClassPoint.app, and this is the class code here. And we have 2 minutes.
Unfortunately, we don't have 2 minutes.
Really?
Okay. Unfortunately. So if the participants please very quickly respond, we can finish because the next speaker is waiting.
Okay, so thank you. I hope you will use some of them and enjoy them. Let's not wait until the time finishes. And quickly, I will show you the results of students' responses. I asked them if they like using interactive technologies in class, and if it matches their own way of learning. The results are all positive. They like to use technology in class. They say they prepare me for the modern world. Despite the challenges, they enjoy using interactive technologies in classes. And they say it brings fun and enjoyment into the class. And they find them they say it leads to productivity.
I don't know whether you can see the chat box or not, but the participants also think that these are very useful applications, and they are all eager to try them. So thank you very much for this
they will enjoy
wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.